when was the last time that you connected meaningfully to your body? When was the last time you meaningfully connected with a person in your community? In this episode of L3 Philosophy, I explore the transformative power of community, healing, and self love with my guest, Jen Earls, the founder of Dance for Humanity. Jen shares her powerful journey from battling Hodgkin's lymphoma at age 14 to becoming a community dance leader and performance artist. Tune in for a conversation full of insights on how we can integrate emotional growth and living authentically to create a regenerative impact in a world that needs more compassion. Hello, Jen. Thank you so much for being with me today so we can have this wonderful conversation.
I'm really honored to be here and to represent myself. My name is Jen Earls, she, hers. I am currently based in Asheville, North Carolina, although originally from Boston, Massachusetts, where we met and where I grew up. And how I like to describe myself to people is really that I'm a community dance leader and performance artist, all with the goal of regenerative impact. So I love bringing people together in the Latin dance communities, ecstatic dance communities to really thrive more together, to support each individual in being well in the world, to strengthen our relationships, and also to have regenerative impact in local communities and especially with the land. So I'm really excited to talk more about my journey to that point and really have this conversation with you today. So.
Yeah, and some of the things like the keywords, I guess, that, I was pulling out as you were sharing that is community, really,
Yeah.
really important and valuable, connection,
Hmm.
and really just kind of getting in touch with your deeper self so that you can have an impact on the people around you and the environment around you.
Yes.
So that kind of aligns perfectly with what we're talking about here, which is how can you L3 love yourself, love your relationships, and love your life through life's challenges or life's transitions. So I know that you have a tremendous story around needing to heal, rebuild, and start over in a bunch of different ways. But I know that you're going to share one story in particular with us about how you got started in all of this.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And, you mentioned the word when we were chatting about origin story, and the story really does, it has shaped me into the person who I am today. So, when I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is cancer of the lymph nodes. And later on, we actually did discover that it was linked to environmental pollution. So, these are the seeds of the threads of where I am today. And that was really, really challenging for me as a teenager to go through something that no one else around me was really going through, and to really feel this kind of devastation in my body of just the potential that I could die and that I would lose this beautiful life that I had so much inspiration and passion for. Um, so that was really, really deeply impactful for me. And at that stage, how to really heal, rebuild, and start over. Fortunately, I was treated by an incredible care team and at Mass General Hospital, and I was able to move on from that with also the loving support of my family and my friends. And after that, the biggest challenge I faced was really just how can I be in my body anew with this experience that had just happened in my body, and also deal with the emotions that came up from that experience. And I'd say it's been a many year journey, and I can talk more about that. But those were the biggest challenges I faced, and the ones that have really shaped me into somebody who's deeply, deeply cares about being embodied and able to hold space for emotions now. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine having to go through something that serious at age 14. If you're thinking about, okay, what are most people doing at 14 years old? You might be a freshman in high school. What grade were you in?
Yeah, I was actually in eighth grade.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, just about to enter high school. So it is a very transformative time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was
Yeah.
impactful.
And I know that you and I have been friends for a while, and we talk often. And so I know that, we talked a little bit about, you just mentioned like how do you be in your body again after something like that happens, but even before that happens, it's like at that age everything's changing, you're learning about your body, and you have to go into doctor's visits where people are, being invasive towards your body. So in terms of like, the three parts of L3, starting at kind of the very beginning of love yourself, what kinds of emotions were you going through that process? Were there any times that you really struggled with loving yourself through it? And then how did you manage to kind of get to a point where you might accept what was happening?
Yeah. It's a great question. I struggled immensely with loving myself through it. I experienced the entire range of emotions from shame and like having to expose my body to doctors, at a time where I was, as you said, changing as a teenager, guilt that I must have done something wrong to, be in this position. Um, and also a lot of anger and frustration. Why me? Why is this happening to me? All of that, and a lot of shutting down to like not wanting to be with the emotions that were coming up. And really, the greatest gift has been dance, which is how we met, as a tool for me to. It was the one place at that time that I felt like I could be in my body and I could be free and felt safe and empowered to express emotions, not only the difficult ones, but joy, and to feel a sense of I could still feel passion and feel alive, even in a moment where I didn't have control over anything else in my life.
Seems really critical to be able to feel really alive and joyful when everything else might have felt really devastating or maybe even hopeless. So I'm curious to know, I know that you like certain types of dances from our interactions together. Did you just kind of, dance to music like freestyle in your room, or were you on dance teams? Did you go to classes? How did you kind of discover dance, in the way that really filled you with joy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was already enrolled in dance classes thanks to my mom when I was young. I was in like tap, ballet, and jazz. But it was interesting because I was doing these steps that I was being taught. And it was at this moment that going through something really emotional in my life that I started to experiment with bringing my emotion out in the dances I was being taught. And that's when people, like my teachers, started to notice a change in me. So that became my entry point into dance, not only as just learning steps, but how do I bring my spirit, bring intention, bring expression to it. And then throughout college, I was on different, in different dance groups, but it was in college that I really got a chance to join like salsa communities as I got closer to Boston. And salsa became a beautiful place where we met and also where I got to explore the roots of dance as something very communal, stemming all the way back to roots in West Africa that are really about the village of coming together and dancing with whether it's honoring spirits and deities, nature, honoring people in the community. And since then, it's just really taken off for me as a really a spiritual practice. So,
Yeah, and I do wanna highlight, it was your birthday recently, and you came up to Boston, and we got to hang out, and we got to do a little bit of dancing at this amazing live salsa band in Cambridge, and, we had a conversation afterwards because w- we were talking about how alive and connected we each felt to ourselves, which then enabled us to feel extremely connected to each other because we were very much, enthralled with the music and the rhythm. But just like you were explaining, that sense of freedom that you're allowing your body and your soul to express in the moment as an individual is magnetic, and it just allows this opportunity to be with someone else or other people around you who are also kind of amplifying their aliveness. So do you want to add on anything to that? Because I know we talked about it, and you just mentioned how dance has been used as a spiritual practice, for a very long time.
yeah. Something that made me think of as you were speaking is this idea of I read an article about kinesthetic empathy, where we're able to really see those mirror neurons that fire when we see others in front of us moving in a certain way. So we are meant as human beings, we are deeply interconnected, even our neural networks, to see when we see someone in front of us acting a certain way, we feel that in our bodies. So I think a beautiful thing about dance is it predates that verbal language where humans just moving together in synchrony really are able to express and feel that compassion and that empathy for another human being. So given that that's built into our circuitry, the beautiful thing of like when we're going out and we're intentionally calling in maybe a particular energy when we dance, like you and I talked about this feeling of like feeling the power of life force and spirit, the divine, the universe, whatever you want to call it, that if we intentionally call that in ourselves and then we're doing that together intentionally, it's extremely powerful and has such a powerful positive impact in life. So something I want to experiment with actually, let's not just do it just because it just comes up haphazardly, but let's actually like intentionally do it together, and how much more power could that bring to have a positive impact in our world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that something that was really important about that night was that we gathered beforehand and we were able, per your idea, we were able to share what we did want to call in for ourselves, but also for the other people that we were going out with. And so you just mentioned, dancing with an intention. And of course, yes, people can go out and just dance and have a great time and you can still have fun, but today the purpose is like we're trying to give people different tools so that they can access, these parts of themselves that they might not even be in touch with. And so when you allow yourself to really enjoy some kind of activity, whether it's dance or something else, and you do it with some kind of an intention, sometimes you can end up forming relationships with other people who are kind of experiencing similar things.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was one other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit more about, which was this neurocircuitry. I found that really, really fascinating because immediately I thought of a little baby. I mean, what's the very first thing you're doing when you're, an infant is you're observing your environment and you're just like downloading information and learning how to respond. And so when you mentioned, mirroring and dance, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because that's exactly what you do when you're an infant. You look at your parents, and if they smile, you smile. If they laugh, you laugh. And it also made me think of when I went to Cuba. I was just so fascinated by how people would just like break out into dance in the streets, like or wherever they were in the plaza, if there was like salsa music playing. And there'd typically be like maybe one person who was like leading a move, and then like, three other people would just like follow them and do the same move. And then they would just like continue doing that. And you see that here, in the States and everything in the form of Zumba. I was a Zumba teacher for years. So would you like to add on anything to that kind of communal, very natural feeling of just like following along with someone else?
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful inquiry, even if someone's listening and watching this, is really to think about moments in your life where you can even play with this idea of mirroring. Like if you're out in the world and you're seeing something that you're really enjoying that somebody else is doing, notice how that feels in your body, and then maybe even try the experiment of mirroring them and see what it brings out in you. It made me think of this practice that I had a chance to go on a week-long retreat called a contemplative dance and authentic movement. And an authentic movement is a practice that came out of both a combination of modern dance and therapy, like particularly from the lineage of like Carl Jung. And the idea, the practice is really where there are movers and witnesses. And for a whole week, I was either moving or witnessing others move, mostly in silence. You can do it with music, but music does influence how you move. And I felt the deepest sense of compassion when I was watching others move, like without all the words and all the language. I could really just feel, wow, this is a fellow human being, and like notice the beauty in them and be inspired by the unique movements in them, and also feel like deeply honored when somebody was witnessing me and mirroring me as well. So not only is this a practice that can be therapeutic, but it's something that you can pay attention to anywhere you are in the world as a way to feel more deeply connected, be inspired, and also feel the sense of that common humanity.
Mhm. I love that you're saying, this is a way that you can connect with other people without them even necessarily needing to know it. It's like, I think a lot of people have a hard time, myself included, just like walking up and starting a conversation with someone, or because you're like, oh, what am I going to say? But it's easy and natural to just kind of like, if you're walking by and either you initiate a smile and then usually they smile back, or maybe it's vice versa. And then, maybe you're in the grocery store and you're like picking through fruits and like you just pick through fruits and just like give a little nod. Like, so it sounds like it's something that can really easily be done. And it's also kind of this practice of you allowing yourself to kind of get in tune with the people around you.
That is a great, yes. In tune is a great word, is like just dropping in and seeing what's emerging here. And also, I love that it can bring out new movements in me that I might not have tried myself, but I see someone move in a certain way, or they're experiencing a feeling. And if I let myself feel that, it expands my ability and my capacity as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And something else that you said stuck out to me too, where you were saying that you had an opportunity to witness others dancing, but then you also had an opportunity to be witnessed. And so it's just making me think about how every single human being just really it's a need of all human beings to be seen, heard, and understood. And so many times, in my work as a breakup and relationship coach and in my own life, I've noticed when there's disconnection, it's because one or more people don't feel seen, understood, or heard. And so the mirroring technique is also a way for someone to be able to experience that.
Mhm. I love that you said that because it reminded me. I have also experienced contact improv, which is a form of dance where oftentimes you're moving off of each other and just going with whatever's emerging in that moment. Also, though, I was moving with a partner on the dance floor, but then I happened to look up and saw a fellow dancer across the room witnessing me and mirroring my movements without me knowing. And when I looked up, I saw that and honestly brought tears to my eyes that this person was just holding this space in this moment of like their deep presence with me, this deep presence and honoring me and really just saying, I see you and I'm with you. And without those words, like just their presence. And I honestly was brought to tears. And it's something I'll always remember as such a moving moment for me. Sometimes I think we feel like we have to say a lot or do a lot when really just being present and mirroring, even if it's breathing, being with, it's such a powerful practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got goosebumps just by hearing you say the statement, "I see you," and then you said, there didn't even need to be words because they were witnessing with their eyes. So it's just this nonverbal exchange. So you mentioned that dance has been really important for your healing journey, and I want to also be able to relate, to have other people who maybe aren't dancers who are listening also relate to the impact that just being in your physical body can have on your well-being, mentally, physically, spiritually. So what role has being in your body played throughout not only your healing through cancer, but just some of the other challenges that have come up in your life? Because I know you have other physical movement practices too.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And I have my husband to thank for this, Pierre Andre, in his practice in Body to Evolve. Because for me, I've learned he studies a lot of traditional Chinese medicine, medical qigong, and he's taught me a lot of that. And these practices, which are really moving meditations, there's movement, there's meditation and intention, there's breath work. And I'm not an expert in this, so this is my expression of this. But really the interconnectedness of different body parts and organ systems with actual emotions and and being able to purge and release those those emotions, which is natural. It's natural that we're going to have emotions as a human, but to like release that energy and then be able to call in new and fresh energy and circulate that through the body. That's honestly been a saving grace, that practice for me. Anytime I feel anxiety or any emotion that just feels stuck and it's not moving, being able to practice these movements, which are thousands of years old, and move my body with my breath, with my intention, knowing that it's designed to help me release this energy and move it, and then be able to feel lighter and call in a new energy. It it really and a lot last thing I'll say about that is a lot of these movements are also based off of animals, like things that animals do naturally. If they're in fight or flight and then they just need to shake and release that energy, they can reset and rebalance their nervous system. So yes, a lot of times my husband has told me you can't think your way out of an emotion. You have to feel it and you have to move it. You have to be with it in your body. And learning that has been such a liberating practice for me and so healing for me.
Yes, I am going to pick out that word liberating that you just said, because when people are on a healing journey, I think a lot of times, I know I've heard it a lot. I know I say it to other people sometimes, is like, you always hear the phrase like, oh, you just need to let go. But like, what if you don't know how to do that? It's like, okay, great. I do want to let go, but I can't. Or how do I let go? And so you were just talking, you said the word release. And when we are moving, we're not only moving our bodies, which we're also moving energy, like you said. And even if you're not doing something like dance or slower like qigong, like, maybe for some people, they love doing their workout, at the gym. Like, anything that's going to get your body moving in conjunction with your breath. And I also want to highlight that, it might not be easy at first, like, I think for you and I, like, dance has always been a natural movement that we gravitate toward, that we love. And so it's easy. But I, started yoga, I don't know how long ago now, but it was when I was going through probably like the hardest time in my life. And I did not like yoga. And it took me a while to get used to it. And I started learning meditation and I couldn't sit still for more than a minute. I mean, I was like so itchy to move. And so I just kind of want to also highlight that when you're trying out these new kinds of movements or practices, you might not like them at first and they might be hard to do. But that's why it's called a practice, right?
hmm I love that you said that because before I had all this knowledge, I remember being in yoga practice and in shavasana and just tears just flowing down my eyes and not knowing why I was experiencing this. But then later on, as I took more steps in this direction of somatic practices, I realized, oh, my body is trying to release this many years of pent up emotion and physical energy stored in my body from these really difficult experiences. So I think you're right. It's like being gentle with yourself. You might not like it. It might feel uncomfortable. That's why I think finding good teachers or coaches, to support you through that journey, to stay with it and stay with yourself and really see what's there for you that wants to open up for you. So yeah, I really appreciated you sharing that. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess I would like you, if you have a thought about, okay, you just shared how, dance and movement was really important for you, for kind of loving yourself. Would you say that you're still using these kinds of practices and sharing them with other people in effort to continue kind of growing in that area?
Particularly in loving myself.
Yeah, and then how that ripples out into loving your relationships and loving your life also.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've been on this journey with me as my friend, also hearing me talk about this offering I want to give to the world, which I've called Dance for Humanity. And it's really when I was thinking, reflecting about the aspect of love your life, I was thinking about how it's not only that I get to love my life, like receiving just loving the life that I have, but also love as an act where I can love my life and like give to my life. So dance has given so much to me. And now I'm in this place where I want to give to more people. And so my intention now is to gather folks in whether it's Latin dance community, ecstatic dance community, even kids and different populations, to come together and share wishes, desires we have for ourselves, each other, in the world, and then to go through a practice of dancing together to celebrate those wishes, as well as then exchange emotional support, material support, really uplift each other. And then I'm excited about how we can all dance together also for different causes. Like in the past, I have run projects where we would go and dance out at a regenerative farm, dance on the land, both for healing for us, also the land, and then volunteer there and actually work with the soil to heal the soil. Last thing I'll say about that is it feels very full circle for me because having had cancer linked to environmental pollution, dance was very healing for me, community was very healing for me. Now to bring those together to continue that for individuals and communities, and also to then heal the land, which was what, impacted me growing up. It's really deeply meaningful to weave all of those threads together, not only for myself, but as an offering of love to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing just the super importance of having support systems in place through community, which I know is like a big aspect of what helps you, but also how you want to help people. So, in that second kind of piece of like love your relationships, we're not just talking about romantic relationships, but like who are all of the people that are maybe inspiring you, that are mentoring you, that are loving you, that, and if you don't feel like you have that in your life, where can you seek it? Because I know, heal, rebuild, start over, that's a really daunting task to do alone. So, I tell my students who are in my courses, people, who have just gone through breakups or toxic relationships or just starting over and whatever, yes, it is your responsibility to kind of, get the skills that you need in order to elevate your life, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it alone. So I kind of want to bring this a little bit into the community that you and I share, which is the salsa dancing world, and how, and I know it's not just salsa because I've spoken to many people about this, and I think you have as well, in different types of communities. Isn't it weird how sometimes you can go to a gathering of people and still feel very alone or lonely? And so even though we're even physically dancing with a partner, like very close proximity, how can you still have a feeling of loneliness? And so I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit and what more you're kind of seeking through these
Yeah.
kinds of communities.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. This piece of like many people often in this day and age, I've had many conversations with people as of late feeling alone. And just the other week, I was out salsa dancing, and a friend of mine looked at me and said, "How can I be in a room full of people and still feel utterly alone?" And it really hit home for me. And my thoughts on that, and I've felt that too. I think that one of my favorite books is The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, and she talks about how to change a group into a community and to really give those opportunities for people to really connect on a deeper level. So I do think that people are hungry for an opportunity to share. And so something I'm excited to experiment with more in my communities for Dance for Humanity are bringing dancers together to thrive more together, but it starts with actually sharing what's meaningful to you in your life, sharing what your desires or wishes are, whether it's for yourself or for someone else. We're longing for this feeling of not feeling alone, and by being able to share our stories and hear other stories, we start to see that we are interconnected and we're not alone. And I think they're just less um, given that it's such a digital world, we're not running into each other as much. We don't have those, we have to actually make that effort. And then when we actually go to a gathering, we really need those facilitators to really ask those questions so we have the space to share. So for anyone who's out there and listening, I think something you might think about is like when you're in those out in those gatherings, what's a way that you might be able to share something that's meaningful to you or ask somebody what's meaningful to them so that you can have a deeper moment, even if it's not being facilitated by the broader gathering that you're in. So that's something I'm hoping to bring, and I'm hoping more people can have those moments that they're looking for.
Ah, absolutely. And it is a chief, I would say, like complaint, not a complaint, but like something that so many people are experiencing, including myself at times, is that feeling of loneliness. And it's like how, if you, let's say you're an adult and, for me, I work with a lot of people who have been in really long marriages and now they're divorced after like 30s of marriage. And it's like they might not have very many friends, or they might not really have like a big, you know, social network. And so, yeah, I can see how that would get really lonely, but like how do you go out and make friends as an adult? Well, something that you were just saying is like, okay, how can I frame this as a way to share and learn more about someone else, rather than worrying like the specific words I need to say. Because as we talked about earlier, sometimes people just really value being listened to, right? That feeling of being seen, heard, and understood. And so I think that you do this. I know our friend does this, and I do it sometimes. Is I have cards, and this was your idea. I'm pretty sure I have prompt cards of like questions that you can ask people. So rather than being like, "Hi, how are you?" You have this like interesting question that you can ask somebody. Actually, from one of your gatherings, I got a card and the question was, "What's the kindest thing someone has ever done for you?" And I was like, "What a great question." Like if you ask somebody else that, it automatically you're sharing stories, right? Rather than just like talking about the weather.
Yeah. I love that you said that. Yeah, these tools, I believe that, yeah, that was the Esther Perel's deck, which
Yeah.
she's a wonderful, um, wonderful therapist out there who does a lot with couples and relationships. So these and building community amongst people. So I love that too, because even for me, I don't always want to have to feel this pressure that I have to think of something to say and I always have to be guiding the conversation. So it's really nice to bring these cards because then it becomes almost like a game, which is really fun and people love it. People are just like, "Ooh, this is so great and so fun." And then everybody gets to participate, including you, because this is something you and I have talked about a lot that like sometimes there are certain people out there who feel like they always have to be the one that is going to gather people and facilitate and like make it happen or ask the deeper questions. But like by having this tool, it takes the pressure off of you and you get to be a participant too and be held in the space with everybody. And that's really, really meaningful too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so talk a little bit about you had to like physically heal your body. And then of course there was some emotional and spiritual healing that had to go along with that. Um, would you say that you have any specific instances, moments, examples in your life of where you had to either kind of rebuild in any different way or start over?
Yeah. Let's see. Um, Probably actually for me was definitely a breakup that I went through. I was on a journey to, I thought this person was going to be my life partner. And we really, decided that it was not going to be a fit in the long term. And that was really devastating for me at the time because it was also, I was deeply intertwined in a social setting with this person. And so, like, my whole life was kind of wrapped around this person that I was with. And healing and rebuilding and starting over for me then looked like I found a mentor who was really skilled in helping me develop a more conscious relationship where I could both learn to manage my own triggers and emotions in relationships, learn to hold space for my partner, and also learn tools like nonviolent communication and skills of like being able to express my needs and my desires and hear others because that was a big challenge in my previous relationship. So I definitely think community, a mentor, and then actually I did find my new partner through that experience and then was able to work with him on continuing to heal those components in myself. And that was really liberating for me to finally get past all those patterns I've always experienced in a relationship and was never quite able to break on my own.
Hmm. Yes, because relationships, like we were talking about, is all about mirroring. And so you might have certain patterns with either one person in the past or even like a bunch of relationships. I know for me, it was more of like probably more of like the codependent behaviors in past relationships that I kind of kept repeating until, I really brought some awareness to it and learning how like you said, how can you take responsibility to shift your own behaviors, like your responses to things and just the choices that you're making, moment by moment. Um, and so I've seen you do these like solo dances that are so powerful. I mean, when you watch the dance and the like, you're an amazing choreographer and you have this one dance, Madre de la Tierra, and it is, well, you talk a little bit about it because it's an homage to the earth, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the thread I'm trying to pull in here is in that journey of heal, rebuild, start over, you developed this like core inner strength. And it just really shows when you're dancing because you said that it's more of like an embodied spiritual experience for you. Um, so do you want to talk a little bit about that dance in particular and just how it's really emboldened your confidence overall?
Well, I feel touched and flattered. Thank you for saying that you witnessed that growth in me and that inner strength that I've been able to develop and then actually express through my movement on the dance floor. That's really meaningful to me. And it's interesting because I'll say that dance and that solo creative practice of creating something has been a way of staying with myself. Like I mentioned to you, my wish for myself this year, I just, had a birthday, is to like not abandon myself and really stay with myself. And creating Madre Tierra was a way of doing that, like committing to a project for a couple of months and making a piece of work um, that Madre Tierra means Mother Earth. And like, really, I wanted to both honor Mother Earth through my movements as well as honor myself as a human with a body and sensuality and sexuality and like to feel my life force and like honor all the things that I felt um I was discouraged from having a relationship with, like a positive, healthy relationship with, when I was young. And so creating that dance was a way of honoring those things that were important to me, as well as through the process, staying with myself. And so it wasn't even just the dance, like performing the dance, which I love doing, but I always think it's the process of like choosing to stay with something, whether it's making art or whatever anyone else out there wants to do, like staying with yourself around something that you choose that is important to you and has value and meaning really allows you to feel that inner worth, that inner strength, and feeling like, yes, I did this, I can do this, like this is something that is coming out of me rather than conditioning from outside on what I think I should do or others are telling me I should do.
Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of external grabbing, reaching outward that you're just mentioning is something that I know I've experienced in my life, but also like in the dance community. You know, I considered myself to, kind of be like an addict of dance, as many salsa dancers do. They kind of say like, I need to get my dance fixed. I'm a salsa addict, but like it has some kind of like true foundation in there. At least it did for me. When I was going out dancing, it was just, it's a great thing to be able to dance. I'm not saying that, dance is something negative or bad, but I was using it as like this escape mechanism. Um, but I also felt very free and liberated in my body when I was doing it. So it was like a double-edged sword. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because you were talking about how when you are doing your, this beautiful specific choreographed dance, you are really present. You're present in your body, you're present in yourself and in the intention. And I think that's what was missing. When I was going out dancing all the time, is there was not a presence. It was actually kind of blasé and all over the place and just kind of reaching outside of myself to have something else make me feel a certain way versus having it be self-directed.
Mhm.
Um, do you want to speak to that experience in kind of the dance world, or
That
anything
really
else?
resonates. Yeah, it really resonates, Emily, because like I feel like you and I relate to the journey we've been on in the dance communities. And I definitely agree. I think there can be these spaces are wonderful it's all about how we choose to show up. And in the past, I also went out in these spaces as a way to really escape and not be present with everything. And then that only lasted for so long. I feel like most of us out there, like, we notice we can try this pattern for so long, and then we realize we're just not feeling good, and we're running into challenges, and it's just not working. It's a strategy that's not really working. So to me now, whenever I go to a space, I actually have this sort of meta practice where I'm not only out in the world with whomever I'm with and whatever's happening, but I'm very cognizant. I have a relationship with myself, and I'm witnessing myself, what's going on in my body, what are my needs, what's happening, not in an obsessive way, but really just checking in. So whenever I'm in the dance spaces now, I'm going out and I'm first really just slowing down, taking breaths. Like maybe I put a hand on my body somewhere just to feel my own energy. And also, I think we've talked about this. It's really helpful to set an intention, an idea of how you want to feel, what you want to experience, what you don't want before you go into a space so that you can hold those boundaries and express your needs and desires to others and feel, obviously, we're all learning. Not everything's going to go exactly as we planned. So, not to be hard on ourselves if it doesn't, but like to actually have these moments of pausing and checking in and feeling your choices, feeling the space, feeling your choices, and feeling that you can show up differently in ways that are nourishing to you rather than just like, I'm just going to check out. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you're saying like I'm staying with myself and I'm just checking in, I mean, essentially it's kind of a mindfulness practice, right? Because that's what being aware and mindful is you're drawing yourself back into the present moment and you're going inward rather than, reaching outside of yourself. Um, and I've definitely tried, some of those practices, and I do it a lot more frequently than I ever did before. And just noticing your body, that's kind of the theme of what we've been talking about today, is like how important being in your body is to being able to get access to feeling grounded, to feeling more balanced, and to not let your reactivity or emotions kind of run your choices. Because I know that was a really big thing for me in the past, and it still is in some situations. And so that practice of really slowing down your breath, your body, your nervous system to come out of the stress response is really key, to helping with like the rebuilding piece, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said, like, we don't realize how much we're walking around in this fight or flight. We've talked about this, like this, it's really, we don't notice the state we're in. So a lot of times the reactions that we're having, we think, oh, well, I'm just in my normal everyday. No, you might actually be super overstimulated and activated. You might be in like a fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's activated a lot by our culture. So if just taking a moment and breathing and slowing down, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, and like really slowing everything down really helps me to feel I have space and I have choices versus, as you said, like just reacting in this habitual way. And actually, just this morning, I was thinking about when you said like checking in with your body. I was having a hard time figuring out what to do. I had like all these ideas and all these choices. And I actually was like, well, why don't I just ask my body? And I closed my eyes and I imagined like trying to step in a direction of an idea. And for the ones that were like a no, I immediately felt like a hesitation in my body. I don't want to do that. And for the ones that were a yes, I felt like just an opening, like, oh yeah, like that feels like I can just move through that. And I know you mentioned something similar like recently, if you want to share too about that feeling that you've had about different projects and like just feeling an opening or not feeling an opening. So, yeah.
Yeah, I actually really glad that you like highlighted that as an example, because it's something that I know I want to keep top of mind, for when I am trying to make decisions about something, or if you feel unsure, uncertain. And a lot of times too, I get these questions a lot, around relationships, is like, how do I know if it's the right person? And so with all of the emotions that come up in relationships, a lot of that can be more of reactivity than actually checking in with like your core being and your core needs. So the fact that you're saying that, I think, is really important, because your body does know. And so if you can just have the opportunity to check in, go inward, it will have an answer, and you just need to listen to it. So yes, I just shared with you yesterday. I was trying to figure out what project to work on next, and I love creative projects just like you do, but I was like, I don't know if I should, focus more on writing, or if I should focus more on this and that and this and that. And I actually said, like, when I think about sitting down to write, it's just like this wide open highway, right? It's just like it's this ease, versus when I think about these other things, I feel this almost like pullback or resistance from my body. And it sounds just like what you just described. So yeah, if anyone's listening, I would encourage you to try that if you haven't already.
Mhm.
Do you have anything else to add about anything about your journey, as it relates to L3? Love yourself, love your relationships, love your life, or the heal, rebuild, start over aspect? So anything else you want to add about this whole journey that we've been talking about?
Yeah, something that I was thinking about that I wanted to share is through something about love your relationships that's come up for me through dance is through ecstatic dance communities and contact improvisation. I really came in touch with these practices around consent and permission and boundary setting. And that's something I've always struggled with in relationships. So I was really grateful that I could learn these skills and practice in this like more common way outside of the relationship sphere. And what I loved about it, especially in contact improvisation, where you're interacting and moving off of people's bodies, um, learning to check in with what's a yes or a no in my body, and learning that it's okay to communicate that to people verbally or non-verbally. And in the first contact improvisation class I went to, I felt this total freeze. Like, I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Like, I can't walk away from somebody. That's like a no go. I should just always say yes. And so it was just this really interesting inner dialogue and practice that I witnessed, where I was like, wow, I have a lot to learn here and a lot to grow in. So I think boundaries is some area that we are always, learning new things about ourselves in. So it's something that really helped me a lot. And now I bring that not only on the dance floor, but off the dance floor. And I think if anyone's listening out there, if that's something that you struggle with too, you're not alone. And I feel like these kinds of spaces are great spaces to experiment with these. And then another book that really helped me was called Set Boundaries, Find Peace. So I think any books around like relationships and consent, nonviolent communication are really awesome tools that have helped me a lot, both on and off the dance floor in life, to love my relationships and further love myself and my life. So
I am so happy that you talked about that today, because I think in the dating world and relationships, like even if you're in a long-term one, sometimes if you've never been taught how to set a boundary or even how to say no to someone or something, then it can be really uncomfortable, and you might just end up going with things that don't feel aligned. I know that I've done that numerous times in the past. Maybe even, I know in my past when I was kind of lost a lot of my self-worth because of an on and off relationship that was just like, oh, felt like it was just like depleting, my soil. Um, it made it really hard for me to just not go along with something that someone else asked or said. And I think learning, like you said, how to distinguish and discern what is a yes for me, what is a no, and being able to express it is a huge act of self-care, a huge act of self-love, because that is going to build your trust in yourself, which will then further build your own confidence and your own self-value.
mhm.
So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because we're always in relationship with other people, whether it's romantic or not. And so just being aware of how you're behaving in the boundary department can be really telling.
Yeah, especially for I've shared with you, I have that kind of caretaker, people pleaser energy that it's like I always am worried about how they're going to respond if I say no. And I've had to really learn two things. Like, one, I'm not responsible for someone else's emotional state, and I have to repeat that to myself over and over and over again. And the other thing is, like, obviously I don't want to, when I express myself, I try to express myself in a way where I'm not like outrightly rejecting somebody in a way that feels like uncomfortable for me, but just saying like, wow, thank you. I really appreciate that invitation. So like honoring, acknowledging them, and then just saying, and you know what, that's actually a no for me. So it's this both and of like, wow, I really appreciate that. And no, thank you. And
Mm.
so it's this way that's helped me as somebody who to feel a little bit more comfortable in being able to both honor that person and what they've, asked of me, and then also to really honor myself. And yeah, and we're always learning, and it's okay like if I mess up and I need to try again the next time. But yeah, and actually I'll just share one thing last night that I went out dancing last night
Mhm.
and met this new person there, and she was invited to dance, and then shortly a moment later she came back to sit next to me, and I said, "Oh, you're back." And she said, "Yeah, I was invited to dance by this man, and then I realized that the song like felt a little too romantic for me, so I didn't feel like I wanted to." So she said I expressed that to him, and then I came and sat back down. And I said, "Wow, I am like very impressed right now." She said it's something I've been working on, but I realized that we can also change our mind, and I think that's important too, is you can make a choice, and then if it's not feeling right for you, you can tune into that, and you can just then express it to the person saying, you know what, it's actually not quite feeling right to me and I need to remove myself. And so yeah, that was really healing for me too, to hear that.
Yeah, that's an awesome example, both hers and yours, of how you've kind of been utilizing it. And it kind of brings back to what you kind of started saying about if we were able to hear and understand other people's desires and values, we wouldn't really have to question, like these types of things. And it's not like you can know everybody. Of course, you're gonna, meet strangers, but in a community setting, which is what you are creating, is like, how can we share and also contribute in this community so that we know each other, we understand each other, we honor each other, um, so that everybody has a chance to thrive. Like that's what you say all the time, right? Thrive more together.
Mhm. Yeah, it really, to me, like in my conversations with you and even today, it's really to me about like this presence, slowing down and holding space and listening and being receptive to ourselves and others, as well as practices and tools that we've talked about today. But also, it is a practice, it's a spiritual practice of being in relationship with yourself, with each other, with life, with the world. And so, like, I'm saying this not only to anyone who's listening, but to myself as well, to be gentle and be kind and be loving and know that, when we think it's like not going to change or it's not going to get better, you wake up and you're like, I just had a day like this the other day where I'm like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to do this today. And then I just paused and I went in and I like really held some loving space for myself, and a really amazing like realization came out of that. And then I had an awesome therapy session today too, with where this person held space for me. So it's like, you know, knowing that it's an ongoing journey and it's always going to be like that, and that we can sit with ourselves, have others whom we trust sit with us and help us through that, and we can be there for others too. We have a lot of gifts to share with our presence. That's really all people I think really want from us, is just our loving presence. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I love that for sure. Absolutely 100% presence. I think, and a lot of people have said this, but it's the best gift that you can give anybody.
Mm.
So I really appreciate everything that you've shared today. You're a wealth of knowledge. I feel like I learn something new every time I talk to you, and we talk a lot. So thank you so much. And um, I'm excited to see all of the things that you're going to be coming out with very soon. So do you want to kind of share where people can find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, the greatest way to stay in touch with me, you can follow me on Instagram. The handle is at the word dance underscore for underscore humanity. You can follow me there. Feel free to send me a DM. If you'd like to see our website, it's www.dance, then the number four, humanity.com. So would love to be in touch, whether through email or DM. I'm mostly working at this time with Latin dance lovers, ecstatic dance lovers who want to thrive more together, want deeper, more meaningful connections, both on and off the dance floor, so that can support you individually and that we can have positive impact in the world. So if that sounds interesting to you, reach out and would love to stay in touch and collaborate.
Yeah, awesome. And I know we're ending this, but I wanted to ask you this a while ago to kind of make clear for people. Can you just quickly tell us what is ecstatic dance? Because I know I had never heard of it, probably until I met you. And maybe people are like, "What is that?" And if they would be interested in like trying it out sometime.
Yeah, ecstatic dance is a wonderful community across the globe. By the way, if you're ever looking for an ecstatic dance, you can usually go onto Facebook and find a local ecstatic dance group in your city or nearby in your state. And it's more of a free flow form of dance where these spaces are often in spaces that don't include substances. So it's not like a club. It's usually at like a community church or a community center where you can come together and just feel it's a space where you can move freely. Usually there's an intentional container set where they're setting norms and agreements on how you can interact. You can roll around on the floor if you want. You can dance with other people. You can dance by yourself. But oftentimes it has more of this intentional, sometimes I use the word spiritual, but not in a religious way. It's more about deeper meaning, connecting inwardly with yourself through movement, connecting with others. And also, there's oftentimes like a lot of world music and different kinds of music you can dance to. Some dances will invite families to come and young children. Some will have like fun props that you can play with, like ribbons. So to me, it's like this space for your inner child to come out and move in ways that you don't necessarily feel like you can outside of this space in the world. So definitely a really often loving and welcoming container and community to check out if this speaks to you. So
Yeah, yeah. And quick little story about that. The first time I ever, tried ecstatic dance, you were there. And I was, I've danced for a very long time now, and I was so intimidated. I mean, I don't know if I want to use the words freaked out, but I was like, oh my gosh, I felt awkward and out of place because everyone, like you said, is just kind of like dancing around doing their own thing. I'm like, what do I do? But you came up and you asked, you're like, "Do you want to dance?" And I was like, "Okay." And then we kind of did like the mirroring of each other. And that was the thing that allowed me to just let go of my mind telling me you look weird right now. And it really allowed me to just express. And when you were explaining, ecstatic dance, I was just thinking the handful of events that I've gone to. Um, it really allowed me to just have this freedom of expression. Like, just move however you wanna move. Everyone's doing their own thing, and you're fine showing up the way you are.
yeah.
So, yeah, you were the facilitator of that for me.
I remember that moment and it was so meaningful, like being able to be playful and just like children do. They just kind of, enjoy and are just in this playful, loving spirit, moving with each other. So I'm glad we get to have that moment.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so, so much. I very much enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope everybody else listening can, check out what you're working on because it's fantastic.
And same, I just want to say that I really like in listening to you, I really heard both your empathy for people and really your ability to connect with where we all are on our journey of healing and rebuilding and starting over. And also like just you have such really great tools and tips and like ways of framing things for people. So I also learned a lot listening to you. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. All right. See you soon.
Bye.